Hi, Tom Schmidt here again, coming at you from South Carolina with the third video of a four-part series that I call the Four Corners for a Solid Foundation on Percussion. So previously I talked about upstrokes and downstrokes, I talked about double strokes, and now today we're going to visit single strokes and different variations and practice ideas for working on your singles. And after that, we just have buzzes. So once again, the four corners, the singles, doubles, upstrokes, and downstrokes. And lastly, our buzz strokes. So today, talking about singles, I'd like to introduce you to 3 exercises that I like to work on and share with students, if not every day, at some point each week. So the first one is called, a lot of people call it the sprinkler, because if you've ever seen a lawn sprinkler, maybe they're a little different now, but they would kind of go one direction, 8th notes, the other direction, 8th notes, then 16th notes. I've heard some variations on this, but that's what I've heard it called before, the sprinkler. I'd also like to spend some time talking about Joe Morello's table of time and how I practice that with full strokes. And then lastly, stick control, and often how I like to practice stick control at a very soft volume. So let's start with the sprinkler and my approach to my basic single stroke. And I'll just take a second now and talk about my technique. When I play, I always like to keep the stick right along this lifeline in my palm. That allows the stick to move right with my wrist. And little story, of course, starting out, I had a little bit of a different technique, and I believe my technique has evolved as I've gotten to be a better player. And one of my teachers, Pat Hollenbeck, who I can probably credit for really my development of my snare drum technique, was an amazing teacher, percussionist with the Boston Pops. And he got me to have a little more space in here. And when you look at a lot of the great drummers, Buddy Rich, Joe Morello, you see a little bit of that space. That allows the stick to move a little bit more on its own, and allows you to get on your fingertips a little more. So I'm not saying you have to play with the same technique that I have, but that's my idea, is the stick's right along the palm. These Vic Firth sticks, make sure you're about 2/3 of the way down the stick. And my fulcrum is right there between my index finger and my thumb. And that space allows the stick to move a little bit, allows me to get on my fingertips. Certainly I used to play a little more closed, and there's a lot of great players who play in a little more closed position. The stick's out a little more, maybe a little more flesh on the stick. That's fine. And then certainly when we're playing drum set, we may play what's called like a French grip, a little more on the ride cymbal, keep us relaxed like this. Certainly traditional grip, when the drum was on its side, that's a whole nother world. I've seen a lot of great players play with the fulcrum a little further back, index finger out. If that works for you, that's great. I've even seen some rudimental players in America and also in Switzerland. Their grip is a little lower. The thumb is below the stick, and the fulcrum's kind of at an angle that way. So and that kind of works for them. So I'm not saying you need to play with my technique. That's just a little explanation about how I play. I keep space in there. It's right along the lifeline. I can get up on my fingertips, and I have a nice connection with my fulcrum. So you may find that you'd like to re-examine your technique a little bit as well while you're working on these fundamentals. So to the sprinkler now, I'm going to start 8 notes on the right hand, 8 notes on the left, then 16th notes. Just making sure the stick is rebounding. I'm feeling a nice bounce back. And it goes like this. 3, 4, and 1. And certainly we want to work that up. We also probably want to maybe work on our odd hand, so maybe you might want to start with the left hand if you're a righty, and practice it all different speeds. And then you may find it's a nice warm-up, and certainly different dynamics as well. So let's try it starting with my left hand a little quicker now. So working my opposite hand and subdividing. So I'm constantly trying to feel that 16th note subdivision between the 8ths and the 16th notes. Over time you can play around with even odd groupings, maybe your sprinklers in 7. You can play around with that, different hands, different odd groupings. Just a nice way to make sure the sticks are really bouncing back. And once again, you're not flipping out your fingers. Loose, relaxed, soft wrists. So after that, table of time. So I would practice table of time a lot in full strokes. And what's great about table of time, you're working on your speed, your rhythmic subdivisions, and so you're getting a lot done. And you're working on trying to think about what's coming ahead of you before you get there. So maybe while you're playing one rhythm, you're thinking about the next one. And I'm going to play the version on Joe Morello's book, which goes from quarter notes to quarter note triplets, eighth notes to triplets, 16th notes, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Then you go back the other way. And I've found when practicing this version, the other version I guess would be to just play a little more challenging 4s to 5 over 4s, so go from the quarter note to 5 to 6, using every single number. But he skips a few in his table of time. But you could try catching all those in between, 5 against 4, kind of 7 against 4. There's a few others. But those might be the only ones. But so I'm going to really think about the polyrhythm of 3 against 2 as I play these first few. Thinking 3 against 2 helps it so I can divide from the 8th note to the triplet. If in my head I'm thinking boom, tiki-doom, bum, tiki-doom, I have an easier time getting from one rhythm to the next. And really internalizing that 3 against 2 helps these transitions a lot. So working on your technique, your speed, and your sense of time. It's a really great exercise by Joe Morello. So I never got a chance to study with Joe Morello, but once again my teacher, Pat Hollenbeck, studied with Joe Morello as a kid, and so passed a lot of this stuff on to me. So here we go. I'm going to start the metronome at 58. I'm really going to try to bury that click if I can, and I'm thinking full strokes. So once again, I'm not going to let my fingers snap out. I'm going to try to keep that space and just... Then the quarter note triplets. Eighths. Keeping that full stroke. Triplets. 16ths, 5s, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 4 note triplets. There's Joe Morello's table of time. Just one time each. I've heard he would like to teach them 10 times each, and that was 58, and I've heard he could play them at 110, those fast 12s. So a little bit about that when we get to the 5s, or we get to the 10s. I'm just thinking 5s with one hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just add the left. 11, I don't know. I just think right then left. So you can start these with accents if you need to line up that accent with the metronome. Then you can start to even it out. And then 12s is like a triplet, but 16th notes in those triplets. So 1 triplet, 2 triplet, then 16ths. And eventually all pretty even. So you'll build up these muscles. Once again, as musicians, we're small muscle athletes. And this will help build up your muscles, get your brain thinking of subdivisions and polyrhythms, which of course can be useful later in our long tones for our roll speed. So very useful exercise, one of my favorites. Just gets you feeling pretty good. You might want to shake things out a bit after some good table of time. And keep in mind this is a great stroke to have in your repertoire, but you don't want to be playing the full strokes a lot. Maybe a big note on timpani, something like that, you're going to snap it out. But for most playing, it's a once in a while kind of stroke, not something you always want to be playing with. It's just really loud. So let's switch gears a bit now to stick control. And stick control, you know, of course, one of the great books, very old book coming out of Boston, George Lawrence Stone. So for this one, I like to subdivide turn the metronome on 16th notes. Get a nice, and we all have it. We can have metronomes on our phone now. This is an app called Tempo, and it's great. It subdivides, does everything you need it to. So turning the metronome on, and I like to practice my stick control really soft. I think a lot of times as players, we don't always work, if we're not orchestral players especially, we don't work a lot on this really soft playing. Let me do this without the practice pad. Really trying to come up to the edge. I have my Remo head, I like to play on the crown. Really soft, and making sure the tips of those sticks are right together. You can play on the dime. That's something that Yaron Israel said once, and I really like that. Get to where you're trying to play on the dime. Because of course if your sticks are spread even the littlest bit, you're going to get two different sounds out of the drum. But you'll be really consistent. You'll be right in that same area. And this will just develop your muscles to get used to playing softly and to have that control. So we all know stick control starts singles, then singles with the left, then doubles. So I challenge you all to think of stick control like the way a lot of us orchestral players do. That's soft, off to the edge, and try to bury the click. I was kind of okay at burying the click, but you want to get to a point where you honestly don't even hear that 16th note click. So, stick control, table of time, the sprinkler. Those are 3 exercises that I use very often to work with students and with myself on getting my singles happening. So thank you so much for watching. Just one more video left in this series about our long tone, the buzz stroke. Bye.